20 bytes long. And then the program will be like, oh, it's 10 bytes long, that's okay. I'll just use string copy and copy that string into my buffer. So the length field's right, but the string itself is wrong. So these kinds of things, somewhat rare, but they do happen. So you should definitely, if you got these kinds of protocols, you should look at that. Those things are interesting. The other ones, obviously, large positive numbers. They can cause, if you use them with multiplication, they can cause integer overflows. If they're by themselves unsigned, they can obviously cause integer overflows. Yeah, the last one, which is using very small numbers. And that might sound a bit odd, but all too often you see code like there where they've got, the length which you control, and they've done some bound checking, like it's not bigger than or maximum value, and it's not smaller than 0, then it's okay. And then they come to this part and they say length, and at this part they're assuming it's bigger than 2, or at least 2. But you've given in 0 or 1, and basically you're under-indexing by a couple bytes. And for example, for string termination or something, and they'll add a 0 byte in there. And if you're under-indexing, and this is on the heap, you've got a lot of problems. Right. So these are some of the size fields that you want to take into account. Right. So strings. Obviously, you want to have long strings, really long ones. Just in case somebody left a trivial stack smashes or some stuff like that in their code. This is kind of the classic. And then also format string bugs, you want to look for those. So you put some format string stuff in there. The thing I've seen, which is kind of odd, or at least a bit disappointing, is that a lot of the fuzzing tools out there that are going to fuzz for format string bugs, they're going to use 1 or 2 %ns, or they're going to use %s or something like that. That's not that good. It's not really a good idea to do it that way. What you want to do is you want to use lots of %ns. You want to use 15 or 20 of them. The reason is that if you use %s, even if you use 10 or 20 of them, if the stack is laid out just right, nothing's going to crash. If you're going to use %ns, even 3 or 4 of them, if the stack is laid out exactly right, I mean, it's kind of rare, but I've seen it happen. If it's laid out exactly right, 3 or 4 %ns, it's still not going to crash. And obviously, you want to get it to crash. So, use 15 or 20 of them. And, it's almost guaranteed that it'll crash. I've never seen a stack that's that well laid out by accident. Another interesting thing in there is if you've got like strings and you've got some binary data in there, odd things might happen. You can usually, if you want to generate those, just grab stuff, get stuff out of def random or something. But if you look at the kind of C code that's there, this is very common code, by the way. It's exceptionally common code. Where basically you've got B is a string you control. You've just read it off the network, and you're putting it into this kind of thing. And go up to the first 0 byte, and then +1. You do memory location A, and then you scroll all the way over the array. Say as long as what's in B is equals to ASCII A, just increase B. And then after the loop, you want to jump over another one. What people forget here is that you should, in these kind of cases, check for 0 bytes, because if you don't, basically the string length will go until 0 byte, and then the second B++ will jump over the 0 byte and heap overflow. And this kind of code is exceptionally common. Right, so that's, right, more strings. Other things is like, when something expects a string, don't give it a string. Lots of null pointer references this way. If you got like single-threaded daemons and you got null pointer references, that's a denial, pretty nasty denial service. The other ones, like if you got lengths in ASCII values, that's pretty common. And basically just try to do keep the size things in mind and just use them in ASCII values. And this is fairly common. A couple of months ago, I discovered a bug in Ethereal where it does dist.cc parsing, which is distributed compiling. And it has an ASCII protocol where they say an argument, and then they say the length of my argument, and then they give you the argument. And the code basically just took the length and put it in the sign integer, said, oh, it's smaller than my buffer. Let's give that length to memcopy, and there was a stack smash. right, so that's kind of like, these are kind of like the strings that you want to keep in mind if you're going to look at stuff that's going to be written in C. Some more interesting things, which is usually more web-related, is SQL injection stuff. Though it's not always that, at least not related as in like forms or stuff. But for example, a couple of months ago, a friend of mine came across some commercial product which had a web server, and he connected to it with a fake browser, and he had SQL injection in his browser version, and it would trigger an SQL injection bug in this commercial product. So it's not always in like posting to forums and stuff. You can have SQL injection in other places as well, but usually it's in web-related forums and stuff like that. Yeah, cross-site scripting. I'm sure everybody's heard about them. Some JavaScript alert or something. So yeah, if you're into cross-site scripting and stuff, you can probably fuzz a lot of cross-site scripting stuff. A bit more damaging stuff is directory traversals. If it's like FTP stuff, you can usually get out of, like in Windows, or at least there have been a lot of them, you can get out of your chroot or something like that. In like web servers and stuff, it can get pretty nasty, because if you can do directory traversals, you might be able to get command execution from there. It kind of depends on the way things have been made. And then the last one of strings is command injection. Like backticks, for example, or semicolon or something like that. And every time I find one of those, it kind of amazes me that people still make these kind of bugs. I mean, you've got like some high-profile daemons and stuff out there where there's this kind of trivial command injection. You give it something that'll give to a shell as an argument, do backticks, and you get a remote root shell or something. Yeah. So these are kind of the strings that you want to look out when you're fuzzing. Right. Some more stuff. Basically, things that terminate or something, or that mark its beginning. You can have like null bytes or just 4 zeros, or brackets, stuff like that. And so basically, kind of things that you want to do is like not use them and just have it endlessly going on, for example, or put data that wasn't supposed to be off there anyway, and see what happens. If you can, like, if there are ways in the protocol to escape them, to escape some stuff, try to escape some of these things that mark some beginnings or endings. It can lead to surprising results. And then put several of those after each other and see what happens. Right. How do you want your fuzzer to actually work? The way I usually do stuff is you define some states of stuff that you want to do, and then I just use ran functions to decide what state I want to use, and then just fire that off. And that works pretty well. Usually when you do these kind of things, you'll be working in endless loop. Yeah, some of the random stuff, arc for random, and some more stuff. Def random and def urandom are exceptionally useful. Def random might not be that useful for fuzzing, because in fuzzing you want to do stuff very, very quickly, and it doesn't have to be cryptographically secure. So def random might not be that good, because it's slow. But def urandom is wonderful. If you're going to fuzz, it's like, you can't live without def urandom if you're going to fuzz. Or at least I can't live without def urandom. And it's usually an endless loop that you do these kind of things. The other thing is that usually, and this tends to be more towards fault injection, if you have a very detailed analysis of what you're going to fuzz, and you've got all written down, and you've got months of development, because these kind of sequential fuzzes usually take a lot of time to develop. You've got a whole list of stuff you want to do, and you just have a for loop. You go from first test case till the last test case, and it just run down your list. And that's usually finite in time to do these kind of things. So these are usually two kind of things that you want to decide how you're going to fuzz stuff. Right. The other thing which is interesting in design fuzzer is that you're going to either mutate data or generate data. And mutating data is usually a lot easier, because you take data that you know is going to be valid. If you've got a protocol, you sniff it and you say, this is valid because I've seen it work, it's valid. And you just put it in whatever you're going to fuzz, and just mutate it. Keep it as much intact as it was, but change a few things in there, and run it through. So data mutation is usually very easy to make. And it is amazingly effective. Yeah, it is. So the next one, data generation. This one takes longer because you have to figure out what you want to generate, and then still write code to generate it. So it takes a lot more time to program it, but you can cover a lot more code paths usually. Right. Some annoying things I've encountered while developing fuzzers is first of all, you've got bugs hiding behind bugs where one bug is so obvious that one bug is so annoying that it will always trigger on something, and you will not be able to trigger a bug behind it. So that one kind of sucks. There are a few cases where might be possible to get around the first bug and second bug, but because you're fuzzing, the first bug will always get triggered. So that one really sucks. User friendliness is it's really bad. Yeah, honestly, I mean, it's so annoying to fuzz some kind of program, and every time it gets a packet, you get a pop-up saying, this packet is invalid. I'm like, I know it's invalid. I want you to break, and usually it stops processing anything until you click OK. So it's kind of, user friendliness is really kind of annoying when you're fuzzing stuff. Yeah, memory leaks, arguably, you can say memory leaks are bugs or security bugs, but if it's like memory leaks, like 1 or 2 bytes every time, it's not that much, and you usually don't feel it, but they can get pretty annoying when fuzzing, because if you're spitting out lots and lots of packets in an endless loop, every time you send out some kind of packet, it might leak 1 or 2 bytes. So after 5 million test runs, you've leaked 5 million bytes. And sometimes the leak can get bigger. So if you're going to be fuzzing something, and it leaks a lot of stuff and sucks up a couple of gigs in a couple of minutes, you won't be fuzzing it for long. Right. The other thing is, programs that are slow in general, they're annoying to fuzz because you just have to wait a lot longer for your results. Usually, though, slow programs are interesting to fuzz because, if they're slow for what they're doing, because that means the programmer probably didn't know what he was doing, and that usually also reflects in the quality of his code. Like in terms of security. So they might be annoying to fuzz, but on the other side, they're also interesting because you just know there are going to be bugs there. And of course, you can only fuzz what's configured. If things haven't been configured, you won't be able to fuzz those code paths, obviously. And then the other thing, which is I've talked about it before, but which is really annoying when you're fuzzing, is checksums, encryption, compression, all those things. Especially if it's compression or encryption that's not publicly known. It's not an open standard. It's stuff that you have to reverse engineer. That's pure hell. Right. So getting rid of these annoyances. Bug hiding behind a bug. If it's open source, track the bug down and just fix it. If it's binary, you're kind of not so lucky, because if you can track it down and patch it in the binary, depending upon what kind of bug it is, it might be trivial, but it might also be very hard. You might also be able, which I'll cover in the next one, but if it's binary, you might be able to, if you can isolate where it is, you might be able to preload it. The second one is user friendliness. That one's really annoying. You can usually preload stuff. If you get like a pop-up for something, preload it and just get rid of that pop-up. The other thing is that on macOS, you've got something which is called AppleScript. And what's so cool about AppleScript is, well, I'll show you that in the next slide. But keep in mind that AppleScript is really cool for helping you fuzz stuff. Memory leaks, which is basically, arguably a bug behind a bug, because memory leaks on themselves are bugs, I guess. Again, if the same rules for bug behind a bug apply, if it's open source, fix the memory leak if you can find it. If it's binary, if you can find it and if you can fix it, because binary is obviously a lot harder to patch than when you've got source code. But if you can fix it, try and fix it, because memory leaks do matter when you're fuzzing stuff. And then for like the other stuff, like slow programs and fuzzing what's being configured and encryption and stuff, there's usually no easy way to get around. Maybe configuration, maybe if you know what to configure, what not. But all the other things, there's no easy way to get around them. You're just going to